Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. So, once again, we are here with the Hillbilly Think Tank, and I am coming at you live to talk to you about some more troubles that I'm hearing about. Found out that Pete Hegseth has decided that he is going to shutter about 200 of the commissaries. These are the grocery stores used by military service personnel and retirees, and these are going to be sold to private grocers. So these commissaries, for those of you who've never been in the military, are tax-free grocers. They have government employees working in them. These government employees right now are furloughed, or soon they're not going to be paid at all. They aren't being paid, haven't been paid, but soon they might actually lose their jobs completely, even though they're not being paid now. Well, this is a travesty. As when I was on active duty for over 20 years, the commissary is where I would go to buy groceries for my family. We would pay for groceries tax free. These groceries were a lot cheaper than my other favorite places to get groceries, like Kroger and other big brand chain grocery stores. I also have had friends who retired from the military who went to work at the commissary as federal employees. I've known other folks who've never been in the military, but they work on base at the commissary and they love their job. They love providing that service for our active duty members, their families, and for veterans. Well, this is going to come as another shock to the system here in Hardin County, where we have Fort Knox. And if we lay off these folks further than we already are just by not paying them, but if we actually fire them and sack them, then the only thing that's going to be left is for them to go try to find a job off base in an economy that's already struggling, right? This is just not a good way to treat our veterans, retirees, active duty folks. It's not a good way to treat Hardin County. Now, some people might try to say, well, everything should be private. Military shouldn't have anything separate. You know, you just don't understand because you haven't served. And hey, you can have your own opinion. We all know they're like elbows and other parts of the human body. We all have them. But as someone who is a veteran, and occasionally I still like to go over to Fort Knox and do some shopping at the commissary. While I'm there, I like to go ahead and go over to some of the food trucks that are there. And these are almost all staffed by veterans, have their own mom and pop businesses. And as I've said before, these guys in the food trucks, they're suffering because the government workers that are furloughed right now and or still working on base but working for free, they don't have the money to come buy tacos or buy Vietnamese freshly cooked food at these food trucks. There's all kinds of food trucks on the base. And so that is hurting veterans in another way. They've got their own private businesses. And now the folks that would normally come to base to shop or work on base and would just come out there for a lunch break, they're not buying their goods. It all adds up to mistreating Hardin Countyans and hardworking folks, because not everybody that works on Fort Knox just spends their money on Fort Knox. We take our money, or they take their money out, spend it out in town, all over the county. They live all over the county, you know. So we've really got to take care of our brothers and sisters. We've got to tell Congress and the Senate, hey, we again can still walk, chew gum at the same time. We can do two things, right? If you just insist on giving these billionaires tax breaks, well, find a way to do it that doesn't also kill folks because there's a certain good intentioned group in Congress is like, hey, you give those tax breaks to the billionaires, we're going to insist that you still fund the Affordable Care Act. We don't want grandma and grandpa, papa and mama, as I call them, to die because you're reducing the Affordable Care Act. We don't want mom and dad to die because you're reducing the Affordable Care Act. We don't want to watch our adult kids who fell off of our health insurance die because they couldn't afford the Affordable Care Act and their premiums went up by $100 a month if they make under 60,000, or $23,000 a year they'll go up if you make over 60,000 as an individual, or over 82,000 as a couple. This is a travesty. We're the only wealthy nation in the world that doesn't have an Affordable Care Act that's more vigorous than even ours is. And to think that we're going to go backwards and allow folks' health to be commoditized and bought and sold on the stock market, and you only get to live if you make enough money to afford health insurance at the highest premiums. This is ludicrous. You know, if you are a hard working American, you should not have to die because your minimum wage job will not allow you to afford the most luxurious health care if you get cancer, diabetes, or any other illness. Heck, if you get hit by a car or you have an accident on the job, you shouldn't have to worry about your finances going down the tube and your family going into ruin, right? Many of us, my age, we're in the sandwich generation. You know, we've got elderly parents and we've got kids, and we're sandwiched between these two opposing forces. You know, we're trying to make sure that our parents have what they need after they took care of us. And we're also trying to make sure our kids can come up and be the producers, the workers that they need to be. And we can't do that if we're paying for our own exorbitant healthcare premiums and having to supplement theirs because they can't afford it anymore. It's impossible. So let's remember, guys, push these people with no empathy out of office. That's not the American way. You know, that's not at all the American way. Empathy and strength with empathy is the American way. Having empathy doesn't mean you are weak. It means you are a protector. You're the sheepdog, right? A sheepdog is strong. He'll defend you from the wolves, but he also won't hurt the sheep. And that's what it means to have empathy. You can recognize the difference between a sheep and a wolf, and you will work to protect those who need protection and to hurt those who would hurt your flock. All right. So remember, we're our brother's keeper, we're our sister's keeper. We love our neighbors as ourselves. Those are three things that are not hard to do, right? And we still are strong. So love your neighbor as yourself. Have a great weekend.